Hey, I'm Hallie, and we're coming on the air with breaking news after a woman was shot and killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis. Federal officials calling it self-defense, the city's mayor calling that BS, and now calls for calm with tensions spiking. Look at this, some crowds in the street. This is a live look now at Minneapolis, 4 o'clock in Minneapolis. You can see that some people have put up flowers across where this happened, with questions over what exactly went down in this shooting and the response to it. No confirmation yet officially on the identity of the woman killed, although a Minnesota senator does say she was an American citizen. Here's what we're going to do. There's a lot of eyewitness video of this moment. We're going to play one of the clearer angles that we've seen. We're going to play it a couple of times with a warning. It is obviously disturbing. First, you'll see the whole thing one time, full audio, so you can see the seconds leading up to the shooting itself, the aftermath. Then we're going to slow it down because it all happens super fast. So here it is. We're going to play that one more time. We're going to play the moments. You saw that red SUV there. We're going to play those moments where the agents approached that car and what happened. Here it is. You can see this officer walking up, pulling the handle, right? Then another officer, we've spotlit this, comes around the front of the car. That's the officer who raises his gun, fires. It looks like through the front of the car. The car then, as you saw, speeds off, crashes ultimately into another car up the street. I want to play for you another angle now. This is a clip that was posted by President Trump online late today. You're going to see it from the other end of the street farther away. Here it is. Here it is one more time. You heard those shots fired there. And then on the side of the road nearby, this moment.
They just killed that lady right there in that car, y'all. Killed that lady in that car. Somebody come get their people. Hey, was you riding with her? Did you call any of your people yet?
We're new here. I don't have.
So you don't got none of her family members or anybody number? Do you know anybody on her Facebook? Alright, damn.
Those are just some of the images that we have been seeing. And a lot of questions here. The Department of Homeland Security, as you see here, has called this an act of domestic terrorism. And the president, in that online post, says the woman in the car, in his words, was a professional agitator. He says there was a professional agitator screaming. And he said the woman in the car ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Again, you've seen the video for yourself. And the city's mayor is calling the administration's response BS.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz also angry at what has happened here and calling for calm as we've seen some more tense moments play out. Look at this. This was happening as we were live on the air during rolling coverage here. People throwing snowballs at police cars, officers releasing tear gas into the crowds. That's what you're seeing there. We have team coverage across every angle of this tonight. Tom Winter is standing by, along with our former ATF Special Agent in Charge, Jim Kavanaugh, who's joining us. Monica Alba is at the White House. Julia Ainsley is with us. But I want to start on the ground in Minneapolis with Joe McCoy. Joe, from our station CARE, tell us what you're seeing on the ground tonight and what else you've learned.
Well, Hallie, what we are seeing now is a community in mourning, quite frankly. This is the tree where that maroon Honda ultimately crashed into after that driver was shot. You can see these candles that people have lit. Of course, we have flowers and also a cross. There has to be at least a few hundred people here who have joined to mourn the loss of that 37-year-old who was killed this morning. And I want to bring in this man named here, Emerson. Emerson, why did you decide to come out tonight to the scene?
Because I'm livid. I'm outraged. I'm disgusted. When I got the news, I actually almost got sick. I have to be out here. I can't sit at home and just watch this on Instagram. I have to come out here. I have to see where it happened. I have to see the people it's affecting. I just had to.
Yeah. Were you here at the protests that were happening earlier, or did you just get on scene recently at the memorial?
I got here maybe about an hour ago, so not when the protests were happening.
We appreciate your time, Emerson. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is what we've been hearing from other community members here. What we saw on scene this morning after this shooting happened around 9:30 was, of course, protesters were angry. They were demanding answers from police, from ICE agents, from federal agents. Where things changed was around 2 p.m., and that is when MPD removed the barriers that they had set up. That is when MPD left the scene, and after that, we saw protesters starting to throw snow and ice at MPD officers, and as MPD was leaving the scene, we even saw one person throw an object that smashed the side window of a police vehicle. Those protesters then continued walking for a few blocks, not even a mile, just through the streets of Minneapolis. We arrived back on scene here at 34th and Portland, where, as we mentioned, we now have this growing memorial. What is so interesting, Hallie, as you played out in your intro there, was what we are seeing politically and the two different narratives about what happened this morning. Of course, right now what these people care about is the life that was lost here in Minneapolis, but that is what we have seen play out throughout the morning, is one side saying that Kristi Noem saying, quote, this was an act of domestic terrorism and that federal agent was defending themselves. Then we're seeing someone like the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, saying that is, quote, BS. So we are seeing this play out politically, but what we are seeing on the ground is a community that is extremely angry and a community that is now mourning.
Joe, before I have to let you go, and we're so glad to have you with us there on the ground, a couple more questions for you. First of all, as you talk about the demonstrations and the protests, and I know you're out in it right there at 34th in Portland at the location where this happened. We know the governor has called for calm. The Minneapolis mayor has as well, saying essentially don't give the Trump administration what they want, in their words, in their view. What has what has the tension felt like to you? Has it remained largely calm? Is that what you've seen?
It's not for honey. It's not for self-defense.
It has remained largely calm, Hallie. The only time it really got tense was when those barriers came down and MPD was trying to leave the scene and people were, as I mentioned, throwing snow and ice at officers and at those police vehicles. Other than that, it's just been, of course, a lot of profanity, people screaming at officers, asking for them to arrest the ICE agent that fired that fatal shot. Here, it is completely peaceful. People are just holding flags. What we're seeing is a lot of people who are expressing their love for the country, but also for maybe the country they're from. We've had people flying Mexican flags, people flying other flags from different countries, saying that we are all American. We all deserve to live here in the U.S. and here in Minneapolis. What Governor Walz mentioned, as you said, about keeping things peaceful, he did say that he has the National Guard on alert. He has not called them into the city yet, but he has them on alert in case things were to escalate even more. He also said that he has called the mobile units of State Patrol to come into town. Of course, Minneapolis, post-George Floyd, we saw what happened there after the murder of George Floyd. The state and local officials just want to make sure that things do not escalate any greater.
And Joe, one more question for you, too. We know that Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, I believe it was, said that this woman who was killed was an American citizen. We heard the governor say that one of her family members essentially watched this unfold. Do we know anything else about who she was or her life?
At this moment, we do not, Hallie. The governor also said in that press conference that he has not learned the identity of this woman. Kara 11 and NBC, we are working to confirm the identity of this woman who was killed this morning.
Okay, Joe, we're glad to have you with us. Thank you very much for being on the ground for us there in Minneapolis. We'll come back to you if we can. You see Julia Ainsley here, and I want to do something. I want to bring in Julia. I want to bring in Tom. I want to bring in Jim Kavanaugh as well as we take a look at this video more closely here. Because, Julia, to the point that I know you've been talking with sources, with people around this moment that you're watching is going to be critical to the investigation, now an FBI investigation, as it unfolds. Whether this was, in fact, self-defense, whether this officer did feel that his life was in danger with that car, or not here, Julia. So I want you to start us off in the conversation around the training for these officers with things moving so quickly in a moment like this.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of training that ICE officers do, as well as any federal agents, in terms of when it comes to vehicles, which can be used as a weapon. That's why they are trained to be careful around them. One of the things is it's a practice to try to approach a vehicle from the side at a 90-degree angle, never head on. And I've spoken to DHS officials who are watching these videos and are talking to me, Hallie, because they're worried about what they've seen here, but they can't go on the record because they don't want to be conflicting with what Secretary Noem is putting out on the record, saying that this was clearly a vehicle ramming incident and that the officer was completely in the right. Now, they're not taking sides here. They're just trying to explain the training that goes into it because they want ICE officers to be protected when they go out in the field and conduct investigations. So the first thing they said is they would never approach a vehicle from the front. Now, I would want to see more of the video to see if that officer was already to the right of the vehicle and then needed to come around and he was on his way around. That's not exactly clear how he ended up there. The other thing is that they don't shoot at a moving vehicle as it means to stop it. That, of course, wouldn't be a way to stop a vehicle. It's continuing to move, even if the person behind the wheel is no longer in control of the vehicle. And so they said that wasn't something that could be done really in self-defense anyway, because it's not going to keep the vehicle from moving forward on the path where it's already going. Another thing here we have to mention is body cameras, because if you think back to every officer-involved shooting that's been high profile that we've covered in recent years, even over the past decade and more, it's come down to body cameras. We always wait for that footage in order to see what the officer saw from his or her perspective when they made that decision to use lethal force. But unfortunately, it is not a policy across ICE for all officers to have body cameras. There was a pilot program that began under the Biden administration, and it was not expanded. And so to this day, only about 25% of ICE wears body cameras. Many of those belong to HSI. They do more of the investigative work, not this kind of work. And so even with the One Big Beautiful Bill that made ICE the most well-funded law enforcement agency in the nation, they did not allocate any new money toward body cameras. And so, unfortunately, it's a very high possibility that we never see body camera footage from this incident. But certainly a lot of people talking today about training that is supposed to keep officers out of situations like this. They're not necessarily taking a side and saying that this officer should not have fired, but merely this was a position that could have been avoided.
Julia, I'm going to ask you to stand by as long as you can. I know you got to work the phones, too. On the left side of your screen, you are now looking at this vigil that has sprung up near the location of that deadly shooting today in Minneapolis. You hear people and you see them gathered. They are singing together. Hours after this unfolded, just around midday. I mentioned Tom and Jim are joining us. Tom, as we keep an eye on what's happening here on the scene and this emotional moment for people. Again, the identity of the woman who was killed still not officially known. We have shown you some of the angles from the scene. I want to pull that back up. And Tom, I'll start with you. What stands out to you when you look at this here? Because there's a lot of questions around, obviously, as we've been talking about how this unfolded.
Sure. So first off, the pickup truck there is clearly a law enforcement vehicle. You can see the flashing lights on it. It's got flashing lights in the grill.
And I'm going to ask our team, too, Tom, to pause. We have the ability to do that as you're talking through this here.
Yeah, so this is a great spot to pause. The first thing I looked at when I saw this video a second time is you look at the left front tire, which is clearly made a pivot here and is trying to get out of that. So this individual backs up their car. That left front tire is pointed to the left of our screen as we're looking at it. And this appears to be a one-way street, by the way, and then is seen kind of twisting the wheel and making that turn towards the right when the vehicle is then fired upon and that person who's now deceased is fired upon. So for the ICE agent, and what Julia pointed out was a really good point about the training. However, we don't know what led up to this. We can pause and stop and replay, and you're looking there at the vehicle with its tires turned to the left, as I described before. It's cumulatively about 5 seconds where this incident occurs, and it probably is actually less than that. So we don't know what led up to it. Was this vehicle creating a problem before in slowing down ICE officers? Was the fact this vehicle trying to turn around towards the direction of traffic, was that seen as a threat? Had there been issues before? What is said here? We don't hear a lot as far as whatever dialogue, if any, is said between the driver of this vehicle and the ICE agents. We don't know if they had a prior interaction with this person or if they knew who this person was. So there's a lot of questions here that'll become part of this investigation. Everybody's going to want answers now. The video is very clear in front of us. We almost never get eyewitness video that holds this as well as this does. We've seen other videos as well that show the vehicle turning, that there is clearly an ICE agent in front of the vehicle. I'm going to read to you the controlling paragraph, page 7, item 2 of the Department of Homeland Security Use of Force Guide. It says a Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officer may use deadly force only when the law enforcement officer has a reasonable belief that the subject of such force, in this case the woman driving the car, poses an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to the law enforcement officer or to another person. So that's why it's going to be critical to understand, one, what was in the ICE agents, what was their state of mind leading up to this? Two, what was known about this car, this individual ahead of time? I mean, you see they stop there, they have their lights on, and they approach this car. Was there reason for it, or because of the protests, as has been stated, as you reported at the top of the show, were these guys on edge? Did they have previous interactions with people? Had they been stopping whatever enforcement operations they say they were carrying out? I'm up to, I don't know, how many, 20, 25 questions at this point. So
that's right.
That's why I think it's important to point out some of the still remaining parts of this investigation, Hallie.
Our team's gonna pull up another angle of this. This is the angle we showed you earlier, Jim. It's a different one. It's further away. It's further up the street, and you can see. And this is a different angle too. Again, all these images coming in, and I just want to explain to viewers for 1 second here. There's obviously a lot of video that comes in. We have a rigorous process here at NBC News where we have a team that is confirming that these videos are real, they are accurate, they are from the scene, et cetera. So everything you've seen on the internet, you might not see right here because, again, we have that process to go through. And Jim, as you look at this, you and I have talked before about this question of self-defense. And so as a law enforcement veteran, as an expert in this field here, can you help us understand how you're looking at some of these images?
Looking very close all day at these images and trying to ascertain is, did the agent have a lawful right to use deadly force because he felt that his life was in imminent threat or he was in imminent threat of serious bodily injury. There's a couple of seminal points in this video. One is the one you showed right at the top, the very first video. Was a little longer in the beginning.
Let me have the team play that and pull that up. The longer video, I'm going to ask our control to pull up the very first video that we aired in the show of this incident. It was longer. We showed some of the tee up there with that other car zooming past and driving away. So as Jim's talking through that, I'll get our team to pull that up here, please.
Yeah, we see this is the very early video that we hadn't seen earlier. And it looked like some more people, maybe that original ICE agent is in this video, either in front of the SUV already across the street. You see a person, probably an ICE agent, already there. And here you see an ICE agent, that may be him, walking around the vehicle. I think you could back it up right there, back it up a little bit. You see an ICE agent walk around between the two cars. I think that's the agent who fired the shot because he's nowhere else. So I think he comes from the right and he goes between the two SUVs. He walks between them. And then there's the two agents that get out of the silver pickup, and they come over and they're confronting the driver, and that's when the ICE agent who fired the shot goes around. So
and tell me why that's significant, the movement of these officers, Jim. What does it show?
Well, we talked extensively, and Julia, some great reporting today about, the positioning before the car. We see him right there. He's between the car, and then the car starts to back up. You don't want to get between the cars either. You want to be smashed between them. So he walks around the front. And the other important thing to see here, it doesn't really play for either side of the equation, but it's an important fact, Hallie, is the car backs up, the SUV, the burgundy SUV backs up. Then it's put in drive, and you'll see the front wheel, the drive wheel on this vehicle spins. The front wheel spins. And as soon as that front wheel spins, the same exact millisecond, you see the ICE agent draw his duty weapon at that same moment. He doesn't draw it when the car's in reverse. He draws it when the wheel spins. So I just think that's a good, if I was a commander here, I'd want to break that time down really close to see that. And then the third thing, just to close here, is the last video that you showed, the distant shot that you said the president released, kind of from a couple of
Well, I want to be clear. I don't know that he released it. It was part of his Truth Social post, Jim, just so folks know. It had come from, I believe, another outlet. But we can try to pull that up. And I'm going to tell my control room team, this is the shot that's from the other perspective further up the road. Jim, as you talk here, we'll try to turn that around and re-rack that so people can see it as you're talking through it.
Yeah, we hadn't seen a shot like that, you know, from the front, Hallie, so I think it's pretty significant. It's distant, but it could be frozen, zoomed in to give us what's a critical thing here, and that's the positioning of the ICE agent in front of the vehicle or to the side of the vehicle. In other words, what's his exact position? And, you know, you'd want to, as a commander here, get that frozen right at the, you know, the point of decision. And when I say the point of decision, I mean the point that he made the decision. Right.
That's right.
So right there, you know, where is he? So that's a critical one right there. Those are three that I noticed, Hallie.
Jim, thank you. I want to pause for a second and ask our team to play a new, and this is that video Jim was talking about, a new piece of video that's come into us. This is after the shooting happened. And I want to ask our team to pull it up because it appears to show some of what was happening on the ground as we were talking about these calls for calm, et cetera. Here it is.
Can I go check a pulse?
No, back up, now.
I'm a physician.
Hey, listen, we understand. We got EMS coming, I get it. Just give us a second. We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relax?
This appears to be the immediate aftermath, or at least minutes after the shooting happened. And you hear people who were eyewitnesses, people who were clearly nearby on the street coming out, having these interactions with those agents on scene. If Tom Winter's with us, Tom, I want to talk to you about this because I think what that video also nods to, and if Julia Ainsley is still with us too, number one, the way that these operations now have drawn a lot of eyeballs, people coming to observe, to watch, to obviously in some cases interact. There was an operation that was occurring from ICE before this shooting happened. That's obviously why this most recent operation, ICE was in the city of Minneapolis in the first place. And this is a city, Tom, that understands and has been the center of a national political flashpoint before.
That's exactly right, Hallie. Let's tackle the first thing first, which is the idea of operations, law enforcement operations being watched real time by people in cities. I mean, that's so incredibly rare. I'm not talking about traffic stops. I'm not talking about when something happens, there's an investigation, an incident. But typically law enforcement operations happen early in the morning when a search warrant or an arrest warrant is carried out. And then there's an element of surprise. It's not something where it's kind of telegraphed. Hey, we are going to your town to look for X crime. In this case, immigration related crimes. So that's something that's so unusual. And it's so unusual that people would be following around ICE and saying this is where they are, or what are they doing, and have the opportunity to intercede, have the opportunity to protest, or may actually inject themselves in this law enforcement operation, all of which or none of which may have happened here. And so that makes this very unusual, makes it very difficult for police officers. You're looking at the car there with a round through the front going right into the driver's seat. That's some video I don't think we've yet seen during this show. And so, you know, that makes it a big challenge, right? That's number one. Number two, this happened in Minneapolis. So in Minneapolis, we know about the George Floyd killing. We know about the protest that followed that, became a nationwide protest in the summer of 2020, and what that sparked. And the chief there, Brian O'Hara, who I think at this point in his eyes is probably believes he's had to speak to the nation too many times because of some an active shooting incident at a local school in a church going back to this summer in August, and then a number of high-profile incidents in and around the Minneapolis area. Now they're going to have to deal with, and we saw a video at the top of the show, snowballs and ice being, and our reporter from CARE referring to that earlier in the program, talking about how people are already responding to this. And I think that's got a lot of people concerned. That's obviously got the governor of Minnesota concerned, who's talking about putting the National Guard kind of on notice that they might get called in if there are any sort of protests or anything that happens as a result of this. And the other challenge is, you know, ICE, local police, sometimes people don't draw the difference. You have a federal law enforcement agency carrying out, you're looking at the video I was referring to earlier, the snowballs, those being thrown at local police officers. There's still an investigation. Granted, they've cleared that crime scene, but this is going to be a real potentially contentious weekend in Minneapolis. You've got politicians that are making their statements about what they believe about ICE and whether or not ICE should be in that community in very strong terms. And we know that political rhetoric, no matter which direction it comes from, speaks to people, and sometimes it speaks to people that then want to go out and take matters into their own hands. So, look, this has become a very difficult event. It comes on the heels of a lot of rhetoric in this country, and it's something that police officers are concerned about. We did a story just in the last month or two on NBCNews.com about that concern from law enforcement, and as a matter of fact, spoke to the former St. Paul police chief, specifically about this. So this is a challenging, going to be a challenging couple of days. Hopefully things don't escalate further than they have been, Hallie.
Tom, I'll ask you to stand by along with the rest of our team because I want to bring in somebody who is an eyewitness to this. And Julia Ainsley asking you to stand by too. Emily Heller, who watched this happen in Minneapolis. She's joining us now on the phone. Emily, it's Hallie. Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Thank you for being with us. Can you tell us, first of all, where you were and what you saw?
I was standing on my front porch. Was just making breakfast and I heard the commotion. I heard the honking and the whistles. My neighborhood has had a really well-organized response to the ICE raids, and so I knew when I heard whistles there was ICE nearby. So I was standing on my front porch, hadn't even put shoes on yet, and within probably 60 seconds of me standing on my front porch, the protester was shot in the face in front of my house almost immediately.
Can you tell me, Emily, and I'm sure, I know this has been an incredibly, I'm sure, emotional day for you, what happened in the moments leading up to this? So in other words, when you talk about those 60 seconds, so as, if I understand it correctly, it was clear there was some sort of demonstration before you walked outside, right? Because you could hear the whistles. And when you walked out, what specifically was happening in the street?
There was a convoy of ICE vehicles, maybe 6 or 7. And some of the ICE agents had gotten out of their vehicles, and some of the protesters, some of them were on foot. The woman who was shot was in a Honda Pilot, and she was parked perpendicular to traffic. She was blocking traffic as part of her peaceful protest, and the ICE agents were telling her to move, 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 and just seemed totally chaotic. The protesters seemed way more organized than the ICE agents did. It was totally chaotic, and the ICE agents were telling her to move, 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 and then they approached her vehicle and grabbed her, the driver's side door to try to open it and pull her out, I imagine. And then that's when she, I'm sure, got spooked, and she started to reverse. She reversed a little bit so she could angle her wheels to, it's a one-way, so she could only go out one way, and she reversed. And then she started to accelerate forward, and then one of the ICE agents stepped in front of her and yelled, "Stop," and leaned over the front of the hood of her car and shot her in the face. It was about 3 or 4 shots.
Emily, this level of detail is, I think, helpful as we are looking at some of the videos you're describing it. So I want to repeat this back to you. Because you described the woman who was killed as a protester. Can you, to be clear, it sounds as though you're saying she was in her car protesting by blocking the convoy of ICE or federal vehicles that was coming up this one-way street. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Okay. And we're showing the video now where you describe her angling her wheels and pulling off. What happened in the moments after? What did you see in those moments?
I heard the pops, and then it's like she just put her foot on the gas, like fully, and drove off, and she sped off, and immediately you could tell from the shots it was fatal. There was no way she was going to survive, but she immediately hit a lamppost, and then ran into some cars as well, and then she was just sitting in her car, slumped over, and by this point I had gotten my shoes on. I was outside recording. I believe it was a neighbor who showed up, and he was saying he was a medic, or he was a physician, and he wanted to administer CPR. And at this point, it was just ICE agents, and they were extremely rude and just told him to shut up and get back. We don't care. We have our own EMS coming. And it took 15 minutes for EMS to arrive. And then when they did arrive, they couldn't get through with the ambulance. So they just came on foot and then examined her for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And then they carried her out by her limbs like a sack of potatoes. There was no stretcher. They had to walk her to the corner to get closer to the ambulance.
Emily, we're showing some of the video that you provided here, some of the video that you're talking about, the neighbor apparently, or the person you said that was saying, I'm a physician, et cetera. So we're seeing that interaction as you're talking. How long had this protest, the whistles, the convoy that you heard, how long had the demonstration been going on before you stepped outside? Do you have any sense of that?
It was pretty quick because I had just come downstairs. So it was maybe a couple of minutes. I think they had been mobile, and then when she parked her car, she had successfully disrupted their mission.
Was she with anybody?
Apparently there was someone in her car earlier, but by the time I was outside, there was no one else in her car. She was alone.
Okay. How are you doing now, Emily?
Just running on adrenaline.
Yeah. What's your street like at the moment?
There's a vigil happening. There's people gathering. There's a lot of people just coming out to grieve together.
Can you give us a sense when and I know you've had conversations with your neighbors, with your village, with your community here, of how people are feeling in Minneapolis? We heard from your mayor, the city mayor, who called the actions here and the description from the Trump administration BS. He told ICE to get the F out, essentially, using that language, as you know, Emily. What is it like in the city based on your interactions with the people around you?
I don't know. I'm just getting bombarded with calls from reporters, and everyone that I've ever met in my life is texting me and reaching out. Total grifters. This is just like, it's overwhelming. It's complete, absolute chaos and nonsense.
Emily Heller, thank you very much for sharing your perspective and your video with us and helping us fill in some of the details here based on what you remember seeing. We really appreciate your time here on NBC, Emily.
Yep, thanks.
If you have Julia Ainsley, I want to go back to her, or Jim Kavanaugh, because what you heard from that eyewitness there, filling in some of the discussion around this. You heard Tom Winter. Again, he was raising the specter of whether this was a one-way street, again, relevant because of the way that the car then angles to potentially continue on. Again, a lot of questions here. And Jim, we'll get to you on that. But Julia, your initial impressions here, because again, with this operation that had been happening in Minneapolis, we know had been going on for a couple of days, and you heard that eyewitness, Emily, describe a protest at this scene where this happened that was activated in the last couple of minutes before the shooting.
Yeah, and I mean, Hallie, what an incredible interview. There were so many details that just got filled in for us. And I'm also, as she was speaking, I started reaching out to sources to see if it's common not to allow medics to examine someone who's been a victim of a law enforcement involved shooting. I'd be interested in Jim's take on that as well. But when she mentioned the protest, there was an earlier witness I saw interviewed just on the show before this, where they said that there were also people who would come out, that this is near a local school, and so they came out to make sure the children could get to school safely. That's something I saw when I was on the ground in Charlotte, North Carolina, when Border Patrol had an enhanced presence there in November. And so sometimes what can look like protest is also just a way of a neighborhood watch. She mentioned the whistles. That's been a common thing we've seen in communities. They handed those out in New Orleans and Chicago and Charlotte in order to alert neighbors in the area. It's sort of a way that people who think that they might not get targeted can alert others that they may get targeted. I also thought it was interesting, though, that this was a purposeful but peaceful protest. That's something we really weren't able to square quite yet until that interview, Hallie, because that line that the car was straddling is a parking line. So it could have been, I thought, potentially someone who was trying to pull out from being parked legally on the side of the road. But that witness said that she does believe that this car was parked perpendicular rather, in order to block the ICE officers from coming through. I think that was key just to understanding the friction in the situation. Again, not taking sides of who was right or who was wrong here. Also, the fact that the officer yelled, "Stop." That's something we haven't been able to hear as much of. A lot of the audio we get really comes from the person who's holding the phone. Obviously, they're very loud and close to their phone and shouting. But it's something that the president said in his Truth Social post, that he talked about a lot of the screaming he heard. It's also interesting and notable that the officer did tell her to stop and then fired. Just more details as we're getting in to understand this tense situation that we're only seeing seconds of, that I thought was really notable. But again, really curious to see what Jim has to say. And if it's common for law enforcement to block what would be a good Samaritan physician from trying to administer aid if they do have a professional on the way, although she mentioned it was a 15-minute wait.
Julia Ainsley, thank you for that. Jim Kavanaugh, in the minute we have left, your thoughts here.
Yeah, well, every law enforcement agency has to render aid to any injured person on the site of a shooting like this. Any kind of a shooting, any kind of a violent activity, they have to administer first aid. That's part of the protocol of every law enforcement officer. So I think ICE deserves some criticism here. Even an agent should do that. Every agent should do that. Every agent is trained in first aid. So there should be somebody there that examines the victim. Now it's possible that they went over there and looked and there's no chance of survival at all. That can happen as well. I mean, a shot between the eyes or something, and there's just really nothing you can do. Okay. The physician, again, that's a call. Are you there? Can you render aid, CPR? Then you could let the physician help you. You're not preserving a crime scene. You're trying to preserve a life. And as it turns out, Hallie, paramedics carry the victim out, according to your witness, by their arms and legs. So the scene is disrupted anyway. You always render aid. So ICE should really make sure they're doing that. We'll have to see what they say about it. Mm-hmm.
Jim Kavanaugh, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and a thanks to all of our team who's been working on reporting this story out, including on the ground there in Minneapolis. A lot more to get to here on the show. We're going to sneak in a quick break, but we'll be right back. Some big developments today in the West with new details in Nick Reiner's murder case, with his super high-profile defense attorney now stepping down, but promising the legal process will reveal what he says are the real facts of the murder of Rob and Michelle Reiner. Watch.
Pursuant to the laws of this state, pursuant to the law in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. Print that. Print that.
All of this happening during what was supposed to be Nick Reiner's arraignment. That's now been delayed for about another month or so till late February. These are sketches of him in court today. You see him in that brown prison jumpsuit. He's now got, with his attorney gone, he's now got a newly appointed public defender who says she needs more time to figure out and sort through what happens next. All of it complicating a case that was already complex. Of course, less than a month ago that Rob and Michelle Reiner were found stabbed to death in their home in Los Angeles. Reiner, of course, basically Hollywood royalty. Nick Reiner, their son, is now facing 2 counts of first-degree murder, with prosecutors requesting that those charges be considered under special circumstances. He has not yet entered a plea. Morgan Chesky is joining us now. Morgan, you were in court as this all happened, and it moved quickly. It was kind of confusing because the expectation going in that there may have been some plea entered, perhaps not guilty by reason of insanity. That had been speculated about. And then this very startling moment with Reiner's now former high-profile lawyer.
Yeah, Hallie, there was certainly the big question, will he plea or won't he plea? I don't think many people had this as a consideration whatsoever. But when we saw Jackson approach that plexiglass barrier and speak with Reiner for about 5 minutes and then go into the chambers along with the rest of the defense team with the judge for 10 minutes or so, the questions began growing. And then when he emerged and made that stunning announcement that he would no longer be representing Nick Reiner, there was definitely an audible sense of stunned reporters and other people there inside that courtroom. He mentioned that the public defender had been notified the day prior. And so, as you said, now they have 1 month to kind of consider and look at the evidence that his team has had 3.5 weeks or so to acquire and gather since the slayings of Rob and Michelle Reiner. I want you to hear a little bit more of what Alan Jackson had to say following this big news.
Circumstances beyond our control, but more importantly, circumstances beyond Nick's control, have dictated that, sadly, it's made it impossible for us to continue our representation of Nick.
Now, certainly that line will be parsed and scrutinized in the days and weeks to come here, Hallie. I want to go back to something that Jackson said in that first soundbite that you played, where he said, pursuant to the laws here in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of these murders. That is something to think on going forward, because we know, as you mentioned, Nick Reiner's mental health has been a big question. We have heard that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and that he had changed medications, according to sources, prior to these murders at some point. Not only that, but the judge had signed a sealed medical order that was tied to this case. We don't know exactly what it entailed, but that has happened in the last several weeks as well. We have learned over the last 48 hours or so that Reiner was taken off suicide watch, but he continues to be monitored incredibly closely inside that correctional facility here. So as it stands right now, Jackson making this statement leaves the courthouse today. We have a public defender with that new February 23rd case. I did ask Jackson as he walked away, Hallie, if one of the reasons he was stepping away from representing Reiner is due to some sort of compensation related issue. He did not answer that. We do know that he is certainly not an inexpensive hire when it comes to a defense attorney, having represented Karen Reed in the past. She was accused of murdering her boyfriend and later acquitted. So it will be very interesting to see where this legal saga goes from here, and if we're going to continue to hear these questions regarding psychiatric testing and things of that nature that have already risen to the surface so far.
Morgan Chesky live for us there in L.A. Morgan, thank you very much. I know you'll be staying on this story as it continues to develop with that next court date coming up next month. Thank you. Let's take you down to Latin America with protests right now in Colombia as the president there calls on people to rally against President Trump, who, as you know, has been threatening the potential for military action there after everything that went down in Venezuela over the course of the last 5 days or so. This is a live look now from Bogota, and you can see those demonstrations, people gathering there. Again, live 543 there, 543 in the east as well. With the U.S. moves in the region, escalating tensions, not just there, not just in Greenland, but also with Russia, after U.S. troops seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker and a different one linked to Venezuela earlier today in a dramatic operation you see playing out here. The U.S. says the ships violated their oil blockade, but the Kremlin over in Moscow is accusing the U.S. of breaking maritime law. All of it comes after President Trump ordered Venezuela to turn over 30 to 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S. That's like billions of dollars, basically, if you're going to translate that into money. The president's going to meet with oil executives at the White House later this week to talk about how they can boost production in Venezuela, a country that's home to some of the richest oil reserves in the world. All of it as the White House also sets its eyes on Greenland and some pushback from some in Congress.
Mr. Miller said that the U.S. government, obviously, Greenland should be part of the U.S. That is absurd. Some people around here call me cranky. I've got a couple of buddies that call me cranky. You know what makes me cranky? Stupid.
We got team coverage right now. Courtney Kuby, our senior national security correspondent, standing by. But let me start with our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. On the ground, Richard, you're in it. You're in the thick of these demonstrations here that have been building in Colombia.
So, Hallie, it's great to be with you. I am in the heart of Bogota, the capital of Colombia, and there are thousands of people here. And this demonstration was called for by the president. It is not necessarily an anti-American demonstration. It is not aggressive in any way. This is Colombians saying they don't want American imperialism. People are wearing T-shirts that say Colombia is not a colony. And you can see President Trump's picture here. There are speakers who have been saying that first Venezuela was attacked, Colombia could be next. what happens after that. They don't want to be bullied. They don't want to be part of a greater Trump empire, that Colombia must be respected. That is the message that has been broadcast loud and clear in this square. This is a response to what happened in Venezuela, also a response to threats against the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, who President Trump has called a narco-terrorist and suggested that actions could be taken against him. The difference is this is a democracy. President Petro is facing elections. He cannot run again. He will be out of office within a matter of months. So people here and officials that I've been speaking to, including former senior Colombian officials, say that it would be absolutely insane for the United States to take some sort of military action against this country, because even if President Trump doesn't like Petro, he can't run again for president anyway. So this is a sign of Colombians saying no to what President Trump is doing in Latin America, that their dignity must be respected, and that they do not want to see further military action in Latin America, particularly against Colombia.
And yet, Richard, it comes as back here at home in Washington, you've got the president, you've got the White House really trying to flex muscle, not just in Colombia, in Venezuela as well. You've got the whole Greenland thing, too. Give me a sense of the landscape on the ground, specifically in Venezuela, with Nicolas Maduro and his wife, obviously after the extraction, after they're captured early Saturday morning, sitting in a jail in Brooklyn.
This response that we're seeing here, and there are thousands of people here. I'm going to ask David, our cameraman, to just go up a little bit so you can get a sense of the size of the crowds here. This was called for by the government, but thousands of people have come out because they are not just worried about what might happen. They are listening to President Trump, what he says is happening. President Trump says that he is now the ruler of the hemisphere, and that Latin America belongs to the United States, and that Venezuela's oil is American oil, and he is gathering with oil companies and oil executives to try and divide it up. So there is a feeling across this country that an imperial project is underway, that a colonialist project is underway, and they don't want to see it expand. They don't want to be drawn into it, and they worry that President Trump started in Venezuela and will keep going. The situation in Venezuela was regime change, but regime change only at the top. Maduro was removed, but the power structure remains. The security services remain. There is more and more reporting that the U.S. coordinated this with the Maduro government, not with Maduro himself, but to keep that repressive system in place in order to allow it to be compliant, allow it to maintain control of the people, and to force it, I should say, to be compliant and to send oil to the United States to enrich American oil companies. And people here don't want to be part of a imperial project designed to enrich American oil companies. And that's what they believe is playing out in real time. And they don't just suspect it, they are listening to what the president is saying. And he is more or less describing that exact project.
Richard, it's just so interesting to see you here in Bogota. I mean, to see you in the thick of these demonstrations that have popped up. And it sounds like what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that this isn't so much like necessarily a pro-Petro or an anti-U.S. demonstration. It's really about sort of declaring their independence from the so-called colonialist system. Do I have that right? Is that fair based on your conversations?
It is definitely pro-Petro. President Petro organized this rally, called on Colombians to come out to hang flags from their windows. There are Petro supporters here, undoubtedly. In fact, his office, where I interviewed him not just several weeks ago, is not very far from where we are right now. So many of these people are Petro supporters.
Okay, got it.
Petro can't run again. Petro's party, however, could run again. So this is a political movement, undoubtedly. But as you said, it is more about Colombian pride. This is about saying to President Trump, specifically President Trump, that they don't want to become an American colony. They don't want to see American hegemony spread across the region. So it is about saying, and I've heard many people say, Colombia must be respected. Colombia is not a colony. But yes, absolutely, many people here support President Petro, who, by the way, when I interviewed him, believed that the buildup in tension in the Caribbean, the attacks on the boats allegedly carrying drugs, was part of a larger American project to assert dominance in the Caribbean and Latin America.
Richard, you've been all over the story from the jump. We're so glad to have you there on the ground, bringing us your expertise and your reporting. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Courtney Kube is with us now, watching all of this. It's just so interesting to hear that and to see that, as you are also reporting on another facet of all of this, which is all of this action with the tanker, with the oil, with the military in the region, too.
Yeah, so we had, I mean, shockingly, we had 2 tankers seized today by the U.S., and they were in 2 different hemispheres. I mean, the operation themselves, they looked similar, right? So we had Coast Guard, these elite Coast Guard officials who are trained in these contested boardings. You can see them there. The U.S. military basically gave them a ride there, military helicopters bringing them in. But it was actually the Coast Guard who landed, who boarded the ships. The officials, we haven't found any officials who say there were any actually active duty military involved in the actual boarding here, and then law enforcement took over. The big difference here is we have one ship in the southern hemisphere, the Sophia, down towards Venezuela, and then we have one in the northern hemisphere up towards England in the North Atlantic, and that's the one that the U.S. has been tracking for the last 2 weeks or so. It took off after
this pursuit or whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, actually. It was the first one that we're aware of where the U.S. tried to stop it or seize it, and it said no. They said no, and they took off. They headed east, and they headed up towards England. Well, the U.S. has been tracking them, and now they just seized them today. So the big question is, one thing that's really clear when you look at the photos of the ship, the Bella, the one that's up towards England, is there's no oil on it. And experts in that have been telling us that, but when you look at the ship, you can see it because it's sitting so high on the water line. Yeah, but the Sophia has oil in it. It looks like that's going to come back to the U.S. and then might even be part of this sale of that's going to yield 30 to 50 billion barrels of oil.
Right, and billions of dollars worth. We were showing some of the video here, too. There's also this interesting nexus where there's at least 3 other sanctioned tankers near Venezuela that have switched their flags to Russian now. What's up with that?
Yeah, and so the UN says that there's a law that says that if there is a flag, a recognized state flag on a vessel, you can't necessarily board it. That's what Russia is saying. That's why they're saying that the Bella seizure and border was illegal. It was a violation of the United Nations. But the U.S. still says that these are stateless tankers. So the question is, will the U.S. recognize a flag or not? They don't recognize it on the Bella, and that's what the legal justification that they used for boarding it today.
Courtney Kube, plenty for you to untangle in the hours and days ahead. Thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate that. We got a lot more to get to. We're watching Minneapolis here, and we've learned now Secretary Kristi Noem is going to hold a news conference in just about 10 minutes. Top of the hour, we are going to bring that to you live. Want to show you, I think we have a shot of the room up, a live shot here. That is where she will be speaking from momentarily after the ICE-involved shooting of a woman in Minneapolis. We're going to take you back to Minnesota coming up after this very quick break. Back to our big headline today. After that ICE-involved shooting of a woman in Minneapolis, an agent shooting and killing her, the Trump administration says in self-defense. The mayor of Minneapolis disputing that. We've been showing you some of the video, but what's going to happen here in the next couple of minutes? The head of Homeland Security, Secretary Kristi Noem, is set to speak in Minneapolis after this ICE shooting. This is the location where we expect to see her. Obviously, our team is in the room. We've got that live shot up. We're going to bring that to you when it begins. In just a couple of minutes here. As that is happening, I want to ask our team if we have any shots, the aerials or any shots on the ground from our station in Minneapolis, CARE, because we've been seeing demonstrators gathering, and I want to show you here this vigil. This is a live look here at those candles burning at the site of this shooting, of where this woman was killed in Minneapolis in a neighborhood just south of downtown, just north of the airport. It's actually not far from where George Floyd died as well. Just to give you a sense, as Minnesota, Minneapolis in particular, has been the site of national political flashpoints before. I want to show you some new video as that shot pulls out from our station in Minneapolis that we're just getting in. If some of the aftermath here, what happened after the shooting, you can see some altercations or interactions here. Watch this. Protesters had gathered prior to the shooting and then more of them after, and we have seen some of these interactions there like you just saw with agents. This is some of the video there. Let me bring back in Julia Ainsley as we're looking at these moments that we've shown you of that shooting. Obviously, Secretary Noem is looking to come out in just a couple of minutes. We have heard from her very briefly earlier. Is there any expectation or any sense of what she may be sharing now?
All I can say, Hallie, is she's a pretty steep hill to climb right now, given her comments earlier this morning. She was down at the border in Texas with Border Patrol when she came out with a very detailed declarative statement saying that this woman attacked ICE officers who were attempting to dig their car out of the snow. Now that the public has seen these videos, you've played them here, they're circulating everywhere on social media, and there's so many of them from different angles. It's clear that wasn't the case at all, that this was a woman in her car who may have been obstructing operations by being in the middle of the road as she was, but that it's an issue of whether or not she was trying to flee the scene or intentionally ram. But these are the officers that approach her, not the other way around. So it will be interesting to see if that narrative changes today, Hallie. But she used that to back up this declaration that this was an act of domestic terrorism. We'll see if she continues to double down on that. We can expect, I would expect, that she will continue to defend the men involved in this operation, the ICE officers in particular, the one who fired at the car. That's all been in line in what we've seen from the administration today, not just from the secretary herself when she was in Texas, but from Stephen Miller, from President Trump himself, all saying that this was a woman who was really obstructing ICE and was committing an act of domestic terrorism and wanting to intentionally assault an officer. They've been citing this increase up to 8,000% of an increase in assaults on ICE officers. That's a figure we've asked for months to get raw data on and haven't received. But I think today she's going to have to explain to the American people why she is saying something radically different from the leaders on the ground here who have said, I should not have done this and that they should leave Minneapolis.
Julia Ainsley, thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to stand by. We're going to take a quick pause to allow more viewers to join us with more coverage picking up right now. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and any minute now we are expecting to hear from the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem for an update on the situation in Minneapolis, where a woman was shot and killed by ICE agents earlier today. Federal officials, you see the room there where Secretary Noem will speak. Federal officials have called it self-defense. The city's mayor in Minneapolis called that BS and now calls for calm with tensions spiking. Want to show you a live look now on the ground in Minneapolis. Crowds have been gathering, people at this vigil here at the site of where this happened, with questions over how exactly the shooting went down and the response to it. No official confirmation yet on the identity of the woman killed, although a Minnesota senator says she was an American citizen. Here's what we're going to do. There's a lot of eyewitness video that's out there. We're going to play one of the clearer angles that we've seen. We're going to play it twice with a warning. It is obviously disturbing. First, we're going to play the whole thing. One time, full audio, so you can see the seconds leading up to this, the shooting, the aftermath. Then we're going to play it again. We're going to slow it down because this all happens so quickly. Here it is. I want to play it again, slow down one more time here, because you saw that interaction. You saw the shooting. It's that maroon SUV. The officer walks up. The agent pulls on the car door. We've spotlit here. There's another agent coming around now towards the front of the car, firing at the front of the car. Out of the way, the car then peels off. It ends up crashing into the side of the street up there. You can see it there, almost frame by frame. And I want to show you another angle from a clip posted online by President Trump. You're going to see it from the other end of the street, a little bit further away. I want to play that. From the front of what we're told is a one-way street there, that other angle. And on the side of the road nearby, this moment.
They just Killed that lady right there in that car, y'all. Killed that lady in that car. Somebody come get their people. Hey, was you riding with her? Did you call any of your people yet?
We're new here. I don't have.
So you don't got none of her family members or anybody number? Do you know anybody on her Facebook? Alright, damn.
So those are the angles of some of the videos that we've seen. And as we expect to hear from Kristi Noem any minute now, the Department of Homeland Security previously calling this an act of domestic terrorism. The president himself says that this woman ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Again, you watched that video. The city's mayor is calling the administration's response BS.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
And now with demonstrators gathering Minneapolis and the rest of the nation watching with questions here, we spoke with an eyewitness to all of this in just the last couple of minutes. Look.
I heard the pops, and then it's like she just put her foot on the gas, like fully, and drove off, and she sped off, and immediately you could tell from the shots it was fatal. There was no way she was going to survive.
Emily Heller there taking some of the video that you've been watching from the scene. And then, of course, there's what's happened after, as we have seen protesters in the streets, some of them throwing snowballs at officers, at other law enforcement members, and then this interaction, too. Look at this.
You're gonna shoot someone else?
I want to bring our team covering in all of this tonight. Maggie Vespa on the ground in Minneapolis, Julia Ainsley and Monica Alba in Washington, former ATF Special Agent in Charge Jim Cavanaugh with us as well, as we wait for Secretary of Noem really any minute. Maggie, I'll start with you. You have made your way to the site of the scene there in Minneapolis. What are you seeing?
I mean, Hallie, look behind me. We have several hundred. I think just in the last couple of minutes, it's gotten close to 1,000 people in this crowd. Again, this is the protest that's formed at the site of this shooting earlier today. A massive, massive crowd. And really the through line here is rage. People here are furious. They've all seen the video. They've been sharing videos since they've been here. And we've been asking them, what do you see when you watch the video? And they say, we don't see anything remotely close to what the administration says happened. One woman told me, I don't see an officer firing in self-defense. She said, I see a woman who was scared, a woman who was probably trying to get away from the scene and had officers kind of surrounding her vehicle. They believe she was trying to turn. You can hear the crowd cheering. They've been calling ICE things like terrorists. They've been saying we don't want ICE in our city. And obviously we're talking about Minneapolis, a city with a traumatic history when it comes to police violence. So this is really hitting close to home here in this community. I do want to point out just in the last couple of minutes, we're bringing this here first, Hallie, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, we've checked this out ourselves, now identifying the driver as Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old U.S. citizen here in the area. Her mother telling the paper that the circumstances behind her death are, her words, so stupid, and her mother saying that she was probably terrified. So that name is circulating, Renee Nicole Good, through this crowd. People are learning about her. People are talking about it, again, showing the videos to each other. And the consensus here is no one agrees with what that we've spoken to, with what the administration says happened. That sort of description that we heard from Mayor Fry earlier of this being a garbage narrative, the self-defense rationale, that really resonates with pretty much everyone that we've met here so far, Hallie.
And Maggie, are there any, when you give us a sense of the scene there, you talked about the number of people sort of increasing as the minutes have gone on now. We spoke with an eyewitness a couple of minutes ago who described earlier in the day at the same site where you were, a smaller protest that had begun to build in the minutes before this shooting happened. That obviously this surge had been happening in Minneapolis of ICE operations, this one over the course of the last couple of days here. And that is part of the backdrop to this too.
It absolutely is. I mean, people are very aware that Minneapolis right now, let's step out of the way just to show you the crowd again, because, again, we're building by the minute here. People are very aware that ICE is kind of under this national spotlight right now. And again, it's 2,000 plus ICE agents, DHS says, that have descended upon this city here. And just like in the last few days, DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, calling it their largest operation ever. And obviously there's the backdrop of the fraud allegations here and the recent history of ICE targeting the Somali community here. And we've been covering that as it's been happening. But now this has really kind of reached this boiling point that today, and we use this phrase a lot, but truly boiled over in this tragic, violent way. And we've been talking to people here. I talked to one man earlier, one man who's a doctor, and he said point blank, I don't really come to things like this. He said, I'm not one that like shows up at protests. I haven't really been involved. I've been following the news. But he said, I haven't come to anything like this. But he said, I watched that video, and he told me recently, like in the last week or so, he saw a woman being taken into custody by ICE, and he said, I yelled something out my car window, and when I saw the video of what happened to, now we know, Reiner, today, he said, it really hit me. In his words, that could have been me. He said, I felt like I was exercising my First Amendment rights by yelling something at the ICE officers. But he said everybody in this city is really scared and Hallie really angry, as you can hear.
Maggie Vespa right in the thick of it there on the ground for us in Minneapolis as we're seeing a live look now of that memorial, of that vigil. Maggie, thank you very much for being there and for your reporting. We'll keep that live shot up here for just a second, and I want to bring in Jim Kavanaugh here because, Jim, we've talked about the questions around the shooting. Secretary Noem, when she speaks in the next couple of minutes, may or may not answer some of those questions. What are the first things you're looking for?
Well, she shouldn't be definitive on the outcome of the investigation. I mean, none of us can really say with absolute certainty. We can try to analyze what we see one way or the other. There's some points either way. It's going to take a thorough investigation, all the body cam, car cam footage, footage from citizens, interviews with the officers and witnesses, to be able to make the determination if this was a justified use of deadly force. And just to close, Hallie, all leaders, law enforcement leaders especially, should be damping this down, calling for calm. I mean, really, that's what you want. I mean, the president, the governor, secretaries, directors, chiefs, calm this down. I mean, pull those agents out. You don't need this right now. Let the whole city calm down. Just stop this for a while, let an investigation happen, you know, just calm it down. Our duty as leaders in law enforcement is to calm things down, and that really should be what everybody's doing.
Jim, thank you. I'm going to ask you to stand by, but I want to go to that point here. You're teeing us up for Monica Alba because, Mon, we heard from the state's governor, Tim Walz, just in the last maybe 2-3 hours here, who did just that, called for calm. Said people have a right to peacefully protest. He said he didn't want to have people not peacefully protest, but he wanted to be clear that he wanted that done in a way that was appropriate to the moment here. I want to play a little bit more of what else the governor had to say here.
What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV. And today that recklessness cost someone their life.
Governor Walz made clear that he felt angry with how this has unfolded.
Hallie, and there is so much to unpack, the layers of this, the complexity of just the political back and forth and the really intense, at times, heated rhetoric on a whole host of items between Governor Walz and between President Trump. But that today, I think, do crystallize in how you are seeing both of these men react to what we are still learning information about. And we should just be really precise and clear about that, which you guys have. We are still learning information minute by minute, hour by hour of what happened. And as different angles emerge, you had the President of the United States posting one particular angle, and he did write on True Social that he believed that the ICE officer who he said was recovering in the hospital shot this woman, he alleges, in self-defense, and said that he was lucky to be alive. He really pretty much took issue with what the woman was doing in the car. Again, everybody can watch those videos for themselves and make their own determination, and that's what these inquiries and these probes will do. But the White House really, of course, taking this moment to side with and embrace ICE, posting all over social media from top accounts that they stand with ICE. And you had the White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller very early on, as this was still emerging publicly, posting another angle of that video and simply writing domestic terrorism. So I think you have a sense of where their conversation is going to be on all of this, as certainly Democrats and you're seeing critics of the Trump administration and the White House really focus on trying to call out DHS's actions here, these immigration enforcement operations that haven't just been seen in Minneapolis, but throughout the country and some other cities as well. And this will be a larger conversation about the politics of all of this, about some of these decisions that the president has ordered and has had his top cabinet officials enact and execute, again, in various places. But part of the response that you are seeing in Minneapolis over the last couple of days and this scaled up operation and presence of law enforcement agents is connected to these allegations that the White House has really been amplifying of what they call fraud in child care centers and related to potential other fraud in the state of Minnesota overall. And they have been really trying to draw attention to that. They have definitely put resources into that. HHS has frozen some funding related to that in the state and in some other states as well. So there's a larger, again, more complicated conversation about all of this. But the president was the one who did react and posted that lengthy True Social post. But we haven't seen him on camera today, Hallie. He didn't have any public or open events. And instead, I think you're going to see the White House here deferring to Secretary Noem, to the Department of Homeland Security. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have spoken throughout the day today, as they both have been briefed on this in real time. Hallie.
And all of this, Monica, and you make the important point here about all the layers, about the many pieces to this, as these ICE operations have happened in other cities. This has been a real priority for the Trump administration and a priority for the president even before he took office, when he was campaigning.
Absolutely. This is certainly something that the president said he was going to be judged on two things when he took office this second term. He said it was going to be on immigration and what he does on that front, and on high prices. Those were his two markers. And when it comes to immigration, you have really seen the president at certain times completely tout what he feels he's been able to achieve when it comes to the southern border, when it comes to just the low number of migrants who have crossed through that kind of port of entry or through that down through the border with Mexico. But there is a continued and really a pretty intense call throughout the Trump administration that you see from top officials to do even more when it comes to immigration. They are often promising and vowing that there is much work they believe left to be done. And you did see specifically with Minnesota some of these claims that were not backed with any evidence, going after largely the Somali population there in the Twin Cities. And we knew that those operations were going to take place in terms of immigration and federal resources, again, in the last couple of weeks, as we had seen a shift from places like you saw, throughout the country and in other areas where they had put a lot of different resources. And it's a situation, Hallie, where it's constantly evolving week to week. Sometimes there's a new city, a new area of focus as different officials have moved that. But it remains a top priority, and one that this president certainly says he's going to continue focusing on.
Monica Alba live for us there at the White House. Mon, thank you very much. As we're taking a live look now at Minneapolis, at that vigil at the site of that ICE-involved shooting. Again, a residential neighborhood. You see it here. Our Maggie Vespo reporting earlier that hundreds of people have been gathering as that vigil essentially builds. And I want to show you another piece of live video here. It's that news conference where we expect to hear from Secretary Noem. You might have noticed, some action at the microphone there. That's typically what happens before an official would come out, a cabinet member like this. So we expect to see her sometime, we think, in the next couple of minutes. We will bring that to you live. As we wait for her to speak, I want to go to Julia Ainsley, because one of the things that we've seen, Julia, and our reporters to this point have made this point, the various angles of what has happened here. This is an instance where the images are there. The images exist. We have been and are seeing those images. We may get more angles, and we may get body-worn cameras from these ICE agents as well, at least at some point down the road.
Could be. Of course, it's not a policy that they have to wear body-worn cameras. There's only about 25% of ICE officers who do have body-worn cameras because they were distributed as part of a pilot program under the Biden administration. But in this administration, even with all the money from the big, beautiful bill that made ICE the most well-funded law enforcement agency in the country, they did not put any of that money toward body-worn cameras. Now, it could be that we do get other perspectives. Of course, we want to see what the officer was encountering when he decided to use his weapon. But, Hallie, one thing that came to mind recently, especially as we saw the candles lit up for that vigil, I had a reflection back to a conversation I had with an ICE officer who decided to leave ICE this summer. This was someone who did not have a hard political view one way or the other about what ICE carries out. But they said that someone was going to get killed. That was the words this person used when they talked to me, that they said that they were being pushed so hard to increase arrests, to meet quotas. Remember, Stephen Miller gave ICE a daily quota of 3,000 across the country, which they've really never been able to meet. But they're being pushed so hard to meet it that this person was worried someone might get killed. And those words played back in my head today, especially watching that visual, that I don't think we thought an American citizen would be the ones killed. And this was not a woman that was being targeted by ICE. Now, it does appear she was part of a peaceful protest trying to block their cars from moving forward. But this isn't the way I think a lot of people expected these scenarios to play out when President Trump promised on the campaign trail last year that he would carry out the largest mass deportation force in American history, that there would be American citizens caught up in this and lives endangered. And so I think that as Secretary Noem takes the podium, there will be questions, even if they're not the ones she's asked, but about how ICE's actions impact not just people who have violated the immigration laws of this country, which many voters chose to put President Trump in this position because they felt strongly that people should not be in the country illegally and that they should be deported. But can she answer questions about how these operations affect a community, how they're affecting American citizens? There have been countless American citizens that have been arrested and detained by ICE, something that Noem has repeatedly denied, despite widespread reporting to the contrary and people sharing their own accounts. And so I think that's really what's at the heart of what you're seeing on the streets of Minneapolis and what Noem will be pressed on tonight as she takes the podium now.
Secretary Kristi Noem, let's listen into her remarks. Julia Ainsley, thank you, as she is in Minneapolis.
I want to start out by addressing the loss of life that we saw here in Minneapolis today. Any loss of life is a tragedy, and I think all of us can agree that in this situation it was preventable. I've spoken to the president today on the situation here on the ground. I also just got off the phone a little while ago with Governor Walz and spoke to him as well. I want to reiterate first with all of you the facts of what happened today. At 10:25 a.m. Central Time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement were carrying out lawful operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the snow. Law enforcement were attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family. I encourage the American people at this point in time to pray for him, but also to pray for the deceased's family and her loved ones. Today alone in this country, there have been 4 different domestic terrorist attacks on federal officers by the ramming of vehicles. 3 of them happened here in Minneapolis. We've seen over 100 of these vehicle rammings happen in just recent weeks, and this must stop. ICE alone is facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them and an 8,000% increase in death threats against all of them. In fact, the very same officer who was attacked today had previously been dragged by an anti-ICE rioter who had rammed him with a car and drug him back in June. He sustained injuries at that time as well. And let me remind you why we're all here in this city today and why we've been here. In communities across this country and here in Minneapolis, we're just enforcing the laws that we have in this country. For years under President Biden, tens of millions of dangerous criminal illegal aliens, terrorists and suspected terrorists were allowed to invade our country over our southern border. They were allowed to steal, to defraud, and to perpetuate violence against American citizens. Regardless of who your mayor or who your governor is, President Trump promised every single American that he would make America safe again. He promised every single American that he would work to protect them from dangerous criminals. Since Governor Walz has been in charge of Minnesota, we have seen homicides go up by over 50%. That's also during Mayor Frye's tenure as well. Since President Trump took office, Governor Walz has released over 470 violent criminals back onto the streets here in Minneapolis. He has another 680 of them still within his jurisdiction that he could give to us today to face the consequences for their crimes. Because Governor Walz and Mayor Frye refuse to protect Minnesotans and instead they protect these criminals, that's why we are here. And we didn't just show up yesterday, we've always been here. But we're surging operations because of the dangerous situation we see in this country and because we're no longer going to allow illegal criminals to damage and harm, to kill, to sexually abuse, to proliferate drugs, and to steal American taxpayers' dollars. This state has faced unprecedented immigration fraud. It's seen unprecedented benefit fraud. Individuals were allowed to come into this country and set up fake companies and fake nonprofits and divert billions of dollars away from American citizens and those vulnerable citizens who truly needed the services from those programs. This city has burned before, and your mayor and your governor let it happen. President Trump is not going to let that happen. He and our federal law enforcement officers are here to bring peace and to bring public safety and to ensure that criminal activity is stopped and that people who perpetuate it will face consequences. Since we have been here in recent weeks, we have arrested over 1,500 criminals off of the streets. Our law enforcement has arrested murderers, known and suspected terrorists, child pedophiles, and other brutal criminals that were protected here in this city. We should all work together to protect our citizens. We should all protect the men and the women and the families who live here in Minneapolis, who live in Minnesota, and live throughout this entire country. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for focusing on the important work that our federal officers do and make sure that we're focused on the priorities of this country, and that's making sure that we're keeping people safe. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Secretary, no, Mayor Frye called the claims of self-defense BS. How do you respond to that?
I say that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's very clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers.
Secretary, can you expand too on the agent's injuries? The president said that he's lucky to be alive.
The officer was hit by the vehicle. She hit him. He went to the hospital. A doctor did treat him. He has been released, but he's going to spend some time with his family. I can't, but the FBI will continue the investigation and release more facts when it's appropriate. No, we're following the standard protocol procedures we do in situations like this. When there's an officer-involved shooting, we make sure that we get the facts and that we are getting the statements from everybody involved and make sure that investigators are handling the decisions.
Secretary, have ICE operations paused because of what happened today?
No, we're still out on the streets doing our work to get dangerous criminals off of the streets of Minneapolis.
Can you give us any insight into your conversation with the governor?
You know, Tim and I have known each other for years. We served in Congress together. We both ran for governor the same year and have served as governor at the same times. So we were colleagues, and we discussed what happened here today. We have two very different viewpoints of it. I talked specifically about the fact that we have laws. They need to be enforced. He knows that I believe sanctuary policies have protected criminals and placed a priority of them over the citizens that live here, and he knows we'll continue to do our work, and I encouraged him to work with us. We've never had a cooperative arrangement with law enforcement here. Whenever we've done investigations, whenever we've done police work, when we've been doing what we can to bring people to justice for the crimes that they commit, we haven't had the cooperation of the state of Minnesota or the city police here under the mayor's direction. If you talk to any of these federal law enforcement officers, they'll say that when they call for backup in a situation, that it's hit and miss. They were grateful today that the police chief and local law enforcement showed up at the scene and helped secure it to make sure that nobody was harmed and that the FBI could do their work. But I would encourage them to work with us, that we could form a partnership that would make sure that individuals have the opportunity to have a safe Minneapolis. Over here. You know, it's clearly established law that a vehicle driven by a person and used to harm someone is a deadly weapon. Deadly force is perfectly lawful when a threat is faced by a weapon. So I do believe that this officer used his training in this situation, and we'll let the FBI continue the investigation to get it resolved. I know you keep asking that, but that doesn't mean that the FBI is going to give you an answer today. There will be an investigation. We want to make sure that it's factual. What I would ask is that as we go forward from here today, that we all remember that our job is to have peaceful discussions. I'd encourage our local law enforcement and state law enforcement to work with us. We are going to continue to operate here in Minneapolis and in the state of Minnesota to make sure we're going after dangerous criminals. One of the key focuses that we've had here is a focus on individuals who are sexual predators and are involved in child exploitation. When I was just here yesterday, we arrested individuals who were charged with criminal assault and sexual assault and people that exploited children. Why would you want to keep them on your streets? President Trump has promised to go after the worst of the worst, and that's exactly what we're doing in Minneapolis. By not working with us, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey are putting those criminals and prioritizing them over our children and our grandchildren. And that's simply not true. He said that to me on the phone, too, so I'll get him the documentation that he needs so that he knows that we would love to coordinate with him. He doesn't give us access to any information on criminals, let us know who he's detained, doesn't honor our detainers, and has individuals and criminals in his jurisdiction that he won't turn over us today, too. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you explain the difference between that incident and today? Was a firearm discharged then? If not, what is the difference?
I won't speak to that case right now, but we can get you the details and the information on that. But the facts of the matter is he's an experienced officer. He's been in situations like this before, and he certainly has been out there and followed his training today. You know, people need to stop using their vehicles as weapons. This domestic act of terrorism to use your vehicle to try to kill law enforcement officers is going to stop. And I'm asking the Department of Justice to prosecute it as domestic terrorism because it's clear that it's being coordinated. People are being trained and told how to use their vehicles to impede law enforcement operations and then to run over anybody who gets in their way while they go out there and try to disrupt peace and public safety. And Americans deserve better. That hasn't been a part of the discussion. I know Governor Walz mentioned some of that earlier in his press conference, but we know we've got law enforcement officers here that will continue to work, and we're hopeful that the public recognizes that the work that we do every day makes America safe again. With that, we had law enforcement officers that were out there doing an enforcement action, and a vehicle got stuck in the snow, and so they had called for other people to come and help them get that vehicle out. Those officers were trying to free the vehicle when the harassment started, when the protesters were out there impeding their vehicles and preventing them from leaving the scene. I won't speak to that.
Was they on the target that person maybe committed that you were going after?
Mm-mm.
Well, body camera.
Mm-hmm. I will let the FBI decide.
Were they on target today when they were in that neighborhood?
They were returning back to headquarters, I believe, to start a new operation, had just completed one. Well, thank you. What's that? I was one of the vehicles that ICE officers were using. But remember, when we operate in a task force model. So we have other federal agencies that work with us, and we're very grateful for that. We have CBP officers, the FBI, DEA, ATF, all of those all work with us every day in a task force model, and we appreciate it. We'd love to have the state police, and we'd also love to have the Minneapolis police chief and his team be alongside of us while we're out there doing those enforcement operations. With that, we'll get you more information as it is revealed, but thank you and everybody. Let's work together to make sure that we can continue to help the city be safer, get more criminals off the streets, and ensure that our public has the opportunity to pursue the American dream in a city they can be proud of. Thank you.
You have been listening to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem shaking hands with officials in the room there after taking questions from reporters in the room there in Minneapolis about that ICE-involved shooting there. A woman shot and killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis as she's walking out of the room. And a couple of key pieces of information here. She defended the agent who fired those shots. You're seeing some of the video here as we're joined now by Jim Kavanaugh and Julia Ainsley as well, and said specifically that the woman who was killed had been stalking and impeding the work of ICE agents who were, as she said, returning back from an operation, and then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle in an attempt to cause bodily harm. That is what Secretary Kristi Noem is saying, as we're showing that video as she's speaking there. She also said that the officer who fired the shots had been involved in at least one other, which she described as vehicle ramming in the past, a couple of months ago in June, that person was hit but is out of the hospital. Not clear, obviously, if it was, she didn't make it sound clear if it was before or after the shots were fired. We will work on getting more clarity on that piece of it as you're watching the video here. It appears as though that officer is standing in the road, although, again, the video images, we're just looking through them. We're looking at what we can see in the facts as laid out in front of us here. ICE is not going to be pausing operations in Minneapolis. The secretary was clear about that as she said that she and Governor Walz had what she described as two different viewpoints, in her words, about what exactly transpired here, with heavy criticism from the governor of Minnesota, from the mayor of Minneapolis, about the administration's response and about this officer-involved shooting here. Let me bring in now this ICE-involved shooting, Julia Ainsley here, because the secretary was very clear to say that this woman who was killed, in the words of Secretary Noem, proceeded to weaponize her vehicle. And Julia, that kind of language is critical when it comes to the question that we've been talking about here of self-defense.
That's right. She said that she used her vehicle as a weapon, which she said repeatedly is an act of domestic terrorism, that she was purposefully ramming these people with the intent to kill or cause bodily harm. I'm just looking down at my notes so I get her words precisely. Hallie, that's a little bit of a derivation from what she said earlier today at the border in Texas, where she said that as these people were, as the ICE officers were digging their cars out of the snow, that this woman approached them. Obviously, so much video has come out since then. That narrative can no longer hold up. And so now she's saying they were getting their car out of the snow, but she was impeding them from leaving the scene. And then that's when they came up to her vehicle. But that still making her the aggressor in this scenario is something she very clearly did. Another thing she said very clearly, she said she hit him. She wanted it to be clear that this man was struck, as you can see, and I believe you just pointed this out, that he does appear to be walking in the road after the car turns and heads off and runs into that light pole. But she says that he was actually hit. I thought that was something to note. I also just wanted to call your attention to someone who was standing directly beside her. He was one of the last people to leave the room. He was wearing an all-green Border Patrol uniform, and that is Greg Bavino. He is now known as the commander, a new position of Border Patrol. He's the one who led those operations in L.A. and Chicago. A lot of things he's done has been put under the spotlight, called in federal courts for going beyond the extent that law enforcement can legally go. He's thrown tear gas canisters into crowds in Chicago when people have come to protest exactly things like this. ICE, or in his case, Border Patrol, going into vehicles of people who were trying to leave the scene. And so his presence here means something, Hallie, because we didn't know. In fact, I've been trying to get that detail today of whether or not Greg Bovino was on the ground in Minneapolis. And his presence means, we knew Border Patrol was there, but his presence can mean that if there are protests that escalate as a result of this, we are likely to see Border Patrol crack down harshly, just as they did, just as he led those efforts in Chicago. That's something I'm watching for next, how his presence in this situation may escalate what we see next.
Julia, hang tight for a second. I want to go to Jim here because, Jim, we've played this video now a couple of times, and I want to, again, Secretary Noem said that there was an attempt to cause bodily harm here, as Julia has laid out. When you look at that video, I'll ask our team to pull it back up. Is there enough, in your view, as a veteran of law enforcement here, is there enough evidence to show that based on the angles of the images we've seen so far, knowing that these are literally the early hours of the investigation?
Well, I think it is hard to determine the mindset. I mean, she's saying that this person was actively involved in harassing the ICE agents, so she must be deriving her motive from those facts, which have not been really laid out for us, so we don't know exactly. But I would also put it this way. It matters not whether the secretary thinks she's a terrorist or whether she was an agitator or whatever she was. If you're the officer and a car's driving at you that clearly is disobeying the lawful commands of your fellow agent there, it doesn't matter if she's trying to run you over or trying to get away. It doesn't matter. If the car's coming at you and you perceive an imminent threat of great bodily harm or death, then you could have a justifiable use of force. So the officer who the car is approaching, if this is exactly where his position was, he has the right to use deadly force. Now, if he wasn't in that position, I think the more important thing that the secretary said was he went to the hospital, he was treated and released. So if the vehicle did hit the agent, there should be some bruising on his leg or his side, and that may be an important fact in the case. I mean, if there's some injuries or bruising, on his side or, he was hurt, that might go to his positioning. And again, there was the video we talked about earlier today from a distance where it shows the officer right close to the front of the car. We couldn't see the positioning, but maybe that can be zoomed in and still photographed. So all of that's going to go to the investigation. But just close, Hallie, the thing I appreciate the secretary standing up for the agents. That's always what the leader wants to do. But I do think that, not trying to damp this whole thing down in the city is a mistake. The Minneapolis police have less than 600 officers, And you brought in 2,000 federal agents to do this. It's really, really ramped up heavy enforcement tactics here. And on the heels of this, I mean, what I would rather see is, cooler heads prevail. And, the real leadership of let's damp this down a little bit. So I was disappointed in that.
Jim, we're glad to have your perspective. As Secretary Noem noted, the FBI is investigating. There will be that investigation that is conducted here into the events and the circumstances around this, as there have been these questions that have been raised about it. We've seen these videos, and I want to play now a new video that's just into us. I'm being told by our team that these are the moments before the shooting happened. I'm going to play it here. We're all going to watch it together for the first time here. Again, cleared by our NBC News team. Here's that video. Again, these are the moments before the shooting. Okay, there's that video there. You don't see the shooting itself, but it gives you a sense of what we had heard from some on the ground here, that there was whistles, protests, demonstrations. Julia, I know that sound will be familiar to you as ICE was carrying out this operation, apparently in this residential neighborhood or near it. Secretary Noem said they were on their way back. And then that maroon SUV that is obviously at the center of this, that woman who was killed was driving, is there stopped in the road. And we had heard this categorized by an eyewitness earlier, Julia, as part of the peaceful protest here, as part of that demonstration. Secretary Noem says that based on what she understands from this, there was an impediment to the operation that ICE was carrying out.
I thought that was interesting, Hallie, because she also says that they were on their way back from carrying out an operation back to the headquarters. And it seems that the way this neighborhood is responding is to a very active, ongoing ICE operation, unless they have followed these vehicles from wherever they did the arrest all the way to this place, or maybe it was nearby. But those whistles, very familiar. We've talked about this, that is something that's being passed around communities where they want to alert their neighbors that ICE is in the area. And so that's what you're hearing. Now, the horns may be coming from the ICE vehicles themselves. I would like to know that because I think that would also be another warning that this woman was given. It does appear that she's hanging out there for a while, which is why this video is really important. It's not that she was simply on the side and then moving her car out of the way. It does seem that this was an intentional way to block ICE from doing their work here. The question is this the way this should have been handled? We also heard Maggie Vespa quoting the mother's interview with the local paper there, saying that she thinks her daughter was just terrified, that she may have come out for a protest, but when she saw the officers come to her car, her flight response may have kicked in. But either way, I mean, as Jim points out, if a vehicle is moving toward an officer and the officer feels in danger, firing doesn't matter whether or not she's trying to run over him or trying to get away. That officer's making that split-second decision. I think what matters is, could that officer have approached the vehicle? Could there have been a de-escalation to this in a different way?
Can I ask you, Julia, because one of the things we heard from Secretary Noem is she said that there have been 4 different vehicle rammings. I believe she said just in Minneapolis alone today.
Yeah, she said 4 total across the country, 3 of those in Minneapolis. Okay. I'm assuming she's counting this as 1, which means 2 others just in Minneapolis today. And I started thinking, why is this so common? She's basically painting the picture that this is this new form of protest and really what she's calling a new form of domestic terrorism to do a vehicle ramming. Now, typically, if you're covering law enforcement and you hear about a vehicle ramming, you think of something like New Orleans, New Year's Eve, a year ago, where someone is purposely driving their car, using it as a vehicle into a crowd to kill as many people as possible. What we've seen in a lot of these vehicle rammings is that ICE and Border Patrol are approaching a lot of people in vehicles. We've seen people be dragged out of their vehicles, sometimes even as they're showing documentation that they are a U.S. citizen and should not be arrested for an immigration violation. And so it could be, just as we hear that assaults are up on ICE officers, what I hear from folks I talk to is that they feel less safe because they're going further. If they're approaching cars more often, maybe more people are trying to get away, and those vehicle rammings are increasing. I don't have any specifics about the other vehicle rammings that she's talking about today, but I do know it's a more common practice that we've just seen in this administration, that ICE officers and Border Patrol agents are approaching more people in their vehicles than we've seen in the past.
Julia Ainsley, thank you. I'm going to ask you to hang for a second because Maggie Vespa is back with us now on the ground there in Minneapolis. As Maggie, we are learning more now about the woman who was killed in Minneapolis today.
Yeah, Hallie, that's right. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune identifying her as Renee Nicole Good, 37 years old, according to multiple U.S. Officials and lawmakers, that she was a U.S. citizen. And local officials here saying they think this is important, that she was absolutely not the target of ICE operations here in the area. People have been chanting her name in this crowd behind me. You saw this protest here in the last hour. It's grown significantly since then. You can see her there, her mother telling the Star-Tribune that, in her words, it was so stupid, the circumstances in which she was killed, and that, quote, her daughter was probably terrified. Her name, again, ringing through this crowd as people kind of circulate the video, talk about the video, check with each other on what did you see in the video. We've been asking people in this crowd, what did you see when you saw the video? And the incredibly consistent through line is that no one that we've spoken to agrees with the Trump administration's characterization of what they say happened here earlier today. We're at the intersection where this shooting took place. The Trump administration, of course, saying that ICE officer was firing in self-defense. As we now know, Renee Good drove toward him. People out here say they don't see someone trying to hit an ICE officer with their car. They see We had multiple people tell us this. They believe they saw someone trying to get away, someone trying to steer away from the officer and flee the scene as multiple officers surrounded her car, the one who eventually fired stepping in front of it, which you can see in the vehicle. So a lot of anger at ICE in this crowd, and a lot of, again, people just learning in real time about the woman who was now killed here today, and obviously will be a focal point on top of everyone's mind here as this historic DHS ICE operation continues to unfold in this city that now truly, Hallie, feels under siege, I can tell you.
In Minneapolis, Maggie, has been the center of a national flashpoint before. You heard Secretary Noem allude to it in that news conference there. This scene just blocks, I believe, from where George Floyd was killed. And Maggie, when you look at the calls for calm that we've heard from Governor Walz, from the mayor as well, and I think we may have lost Maggie. I was going to go back to her if she has this, just on the vibe of the protest, if they've remained largely peaceful. Do we have Maggie or do we lose her? We lost her, but we do have Tom Winter back with us. Tom Winter, our senior national security correspondent here. So, Tom, let me bring you into the conversation here after Secretary Noem's news conference. And we've talked about those calls as night falls there in Minneapolis for things to stay peaceful.
Yeah, I mean, that is going to be the big call. Obviously, Minneapolis has been a flashpoint for protests before. We spoke about it earlier today when we're seeing the videos of the snowballs being thrown, when we've heard from local law enforcement officials there. Chief Brian O'Hara, the Minneapolis Police Department, saying this vehicle was blocking the ICE officers. And so that's going to be a question going forward as far as what the various investigations find. But I think this investigation now being led by the FBI out of policy is going to have to focus on a number of different things. The challenge for this, and the reason why I bring up the investigation, Hallie, is that these investigations take time. Look at this video, for instance. What is being said here? Is there anything being said by the woman in the car? Is she indicating panic? Is she indicating malice? We don't know any of those things. It's going to take a long time, if we ever get those answers, for that to be figured out. In the meantime, as we just saw with our colleague Maggie Vespa, the nerves, the emotions, it's very raw, it's very real, and it's very much on the ground there in Minneapolis. And that's going to be a challenge for law enforcement going forward. And then, obviously, what does ICE do from here? I mean, I think there's going to be questions about ICE's policy. Do these things need to be conducted in the daytime in a very visible way? People have been protesting that. When you have live law enforcement operations, there's always going to be a gun there. Whether somebody brings a gun or not, there's always going to be a gun there because the officers themselves are armed. That's what police always tell us. So a lot of things to be concerned about here.
Tom Winter, our thanks to you, to Julia Ainsley, to Maggie Vespa, to Jim Kavanaugh. We appreciate all of your reporting and your analysis. Coming up right after this quick break, we're going to hear more from an eyewitness on what she saw as this scene unfolded. That's next. We are back with more from Minneapolis, where officials have been calling for calm, with protesters, with demonstrators turning out to this vigil that you are seeing here on the left side of your screen, after a woman in Minneapolis was shot and killed by an ICE officer, and what the Trump administration says was an act of self-defense by that ICE agent. The mayor of Minneapolis has called that BS. I want to play our conversation from last hour with an eyewitness who watched it happen. Emily, it's Hallie. Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Thank you for being with us. Can you tell us, first of all, where you were and what you saw?
I was standing on my front porch. Was just making breakfast, and I heard the commotion. I heard the honking and the whistles. My neighborhood has had a really well-organized response to the ICE raids, and so I knew when I heard whistles there was ICE nearby. So I was standing on my front porch, hadn't even put shoes on yet, and within probably 60 seconds of me standing on my front porch, the protester was shot in the face in front of my house almost immediately.
Can you tell me, Emily, and I'm sure, I know this has been an incredibly, I'm sure, emotional day for you, what happened in the moments leading up to this? So in other words, when you talk about those 60 seconds, so if I understand it correctly, it was clear there was some sort of demonstration before you walked outside, right? Because you could hear the whistles. And when you walked out, what specifically was happening in the street?
There was a convoy of ICE vehicles, maybe 6 or 7, and some of the ICE agents had gotten out of their vehicles, and some of the protesters, some of them were on foot. The woman who was shot was in a a Honda Pilot, and she was parked perpendicular to traffic. She was blocking traffic as part of her peaceful protest, and the ICE agents were telling her to move, 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 and just seemed totally chaotic. The protesters seemed way more organized than the ICE agents did. It was totally chaotic, and the ICE agents were telling her to move, 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 and then they approached her vehicle and grabbed her, the driver's side door to try to open it and pull her out, I imagine. And then that's when she, I'm sure, got spooked, and she started to reverse. She reversed a little bit so she could angle her wheels to, it's a one-way, so she could only go out one way, and she reversed. And then she started to accelerate forward, and then one of the ICE agents stepped in front of her and yelled, "Stop," and leaned over the front of the hood of her car and shot her in the face. It was about 3 or 4 shots.
Emily, this level of detail is, I think, helpful as we are looking at some of the videos you're describing it. So I want to repeat this back to you. Because you described the woman who was killed as a protester. Can you, to be clear, it sounds as though you're saying she was in her car protesting by blocking the convoy of ICE or federal vehicles that was coming up this one-way street. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Okay. And we're showing the video now where you describe her angling her wheels and pulling off. What happened in the moments after? What did you see in those moments?
I heard the pops, and then it's like she just put her foot on the gas, like fully, and drove off, and she sped off, and immediately you could tell from the shots it was fatal. There was no way she was going to survive, but she immediately hit a lamppost, and then ran into some cars as well, and then she was just sitting in her car, slumped over, and by this point I had gotten my shoes on. I was outside recording. I believe it was a neighbor who showed up, and he was saying he was a medic, or he was a physician, and he wanted to administer CPR. And at this point, it was just ICE agents, and they were extremely rude and just told him to shut up and get back. We don't care. We have our own EMS coming. And it took 15 minutes for EMS to arrive. And then when they did arrive, they couldn't get through with the ambulance. So they just came on foot and then examined her for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and then they carried her out by her limbs like a sack of potatoes. There was no stretcher. They had to walk her to the corner to get closer to the ambulance.
Emily, we're showing some of the video that you provided here, some of the video that you're talking about, the neighbor apparently, or the person you said that was saying, "I'm a physician," et cetera. So we're seeing that interaction as you're talking. How long had this protest, the whistles, the convoy that you heard, how long had the demonstration been going on before you stepped outside? Do you have any sense of that?
It was pretty quick because I had just come downstairs, so it was maybe a couple of minutes. I think they had been mobile, and then when she parked her car, she had successfully disrupted their mission.
Was she with anybody?
Apparently, there was someone in her car earlier, but by the time I was outside, there was no one else in her car. She was alone.
Okay. How are you doing now, Emily?
Just running on adrenaline.
Yeah. What's your street like at the moment?
There's a vigil happening. There's people gathering. There's a lot of people just coming out to grieve together.
Can you give us a sense when and I know you've had conversations with your neighbors, with your village, with your community here, of how people are feeling in Minneapolis? We heard from your mayor, the city mayor, who called the actions here and the description from the Trump administration BS. He told ICE to get the F out, essentially, using that language, as you know, Emily. What is it like in the city based on your interactions with the people around you?
I don't know. I'm just getting bombarded with calls from reporters, and everyone that I've ever met in my life is texting me and reaching out. Total grifters. This is just like, it's overwhelming. It's complete, absolute chaos and nonsense.
Emily Heller, thank you very much for sharing your perspective and your video with us and helping us fill in some of the details here based on what you remember seeing. We really appreciate your time here on NBC, Emily.
Yep, thanks.
And that's a wrap for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.